"It's time you forgive him," my mom said. "Your brother wants to reconnect." "Too late," I said. "He's dead to me." On reunion day, they were left speechless. But my fiancé refused to be in the same room with him, and my family couldn't understand why. I, M27, met my fiancé, F25, almost 7 years ago while we were both studying at college. We met through mutual friends, and about a year later, we started dating. When I introduced her to my family, everyone loved her, even my mother, who tends to be quite reserved around people from outside our community. Note, my parents are immigrants, and ever since they moved to the country where we live, they've stayed very close to our local community. They're usually cautious around outsiders. It might sound prejudiced, but it really isn't coming from that place. Now, I should mention my brother, M29. Before everything that happened, I saw him as my hero. I admired him so much. He never let himself be intimidated by local kids, and he was always incredibly protective of me and our younger sister, F22. He constantly reminded us to hold our heads high and never let anyone make us feel like we didn't belong. When he first met my girlfriend, they became good friends almost immediately. As time went on, my girlfriend grew very close to my entire family, especially my siblings. It was completely normal for her to spend time with my relatives, shopping with my mom and sister, playing pool with my cousins and me, and attending every family gathering. One night at a family party, things took a dark turn. We were all drinking heavily, and by the end of the night, I was so drunk that I fell asleep on the floor of my parents' living room. After the party, my girlfriend started acting strange. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "I think your brother tried to kiss me." Hearing that sobered me up instantly. I asked her to explain everything. She told me that at some point during the night, several guests had gone up to the roof to drink and enjoy the breeze. Over time, people started heading back downstairs until only she and my brother were left up there. They kept drinking and chatting, but then, out of nowhere, she noticed him staring at her. He suddenly leaned in to kiss her, but she was quick enough to dodge him. After that, things got incredibly awkward, and she decided to leave the rooftop. After she told me everything, I took her home. Later, I confronted my brother to hear his side. He confirmed what happened, saying he was drunk, wasn't thinking straight, and apologized for what he did. Even now, remembering that conversation makes my blood boil. At the time, though, I thought it was a drunken mistake, something that could be resolved by talking it out and setting firm boundaries. I had no idea how wrong I was. Following that incident, my relationship with my brother became strained. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was formal and awkward, like we were strangers. The only other person who knew what had happened was my younger sister. She found out when my girlfriend confided in her during a conversation, explaining why my brother and I had grown distant. We decided not to tell the rest of the family. We didn't want to cause more damage than had already been done. Months passed, and eventually, my family hosted another big party, inviting friends, relatives, and people from our community. It was the first time my brother and girlfriend would be around each other again. I naively thought enough time had passed, and maybe things could start going back to normal. During the party, I lost track of my girlfriend. After looking for her for a while with no luck, I assumed she might be with my sister. But something didn't sit right with me, and I decided to check upstairs. As I climbed the stairs, I started hearing strange noises coming from one of the rooms. When I opened the door, I found my brother forcing my girlfriend onto the bed, covering her mouth, and trying to shove his hand under her dress while she fought to resist him. I didn't think twice about, and as soon as I saw them, I pounced on my brother and started beating him. My girlfriend left the room as quickly as she could and went downstairs to ask for help. When my father and uncles came up, I was still beating the shit out of my brother. His face was full of blood, as was my knuckles. My father was the one who had to separate us, but I kept insulting him and hitting him. In the end, he was able to separate us, and then he took me out of the room while my uncles checked how bad my brother was. Outside the room, my father asked me what the hell had happened to make me act like that. It took me a while to be able to formulate words, but finally I told him that I had just seen that my brother had tried to abuse my girlfriend. My dad, I know I was in shock for a while. He sat on the floor and put his hand on his forehead and was completely silent for about 10 minutes until my uncles called him because they were going to take my brother to the hospital. After my brother was taken away, I went to find my girlfriend. I found her talking to my sister about what had just happened. I said goodbye to my sister, and we left. On the way home, my girlfriend couldn't stop crying. She was overwhelmed with confusion and anger. By the time we got home, she was still crying and eventually fell asleep. This became her routine for the next few days until, little by little, she was able to talk again. During those days, my family kept me updated on my brother's condition. I had broken his nose and dislocated his jaw. My mother, however, was in denial, struggling to believe her son was capable of such an act. While I didn't think much about it, I understood that everyone reacts differently, and I also understood her need to defend him. The last I heard from my brother was that after leaving the hospital, everyone turned their backs on him. He was fired from his job and eventually left town. In the weeks that followed, I cut off almost all contact with the outside world and focused entirely on helping my girlfriend. She was doing the best she could to handle everything, but she was still deeply scared and drained. After nearly a month of being at home, she had to go back to work, but she returned after just a few hours, saying she couldn't shake the feeling of being threatened. She felt unsafe, as if someone might try to hurt her at any moment. The OP couldn't share the entire story in one post, so continued it in a comment. Once she calmed down, I suggested that it might be helpful to seek professional help. Although she was hesitant at first, she eventually agreed, and it turned out to be the best decision for both of us. After starting therapy, she began improving, and after almost 2 months, her therapist recommended that I attend some sessions too. This wasn't only to better understand her situation and support her, but also because my girlfriend had mentioned that since the incident, I hadn't had any real contact with anyone other than her. I had also never really talked about how I felt. At first, it felt odd, but I didn't question her therapist's suggestion. I was going mostly because I thought it would help me release some of the little things I had been holding on to. I remember the first session being a mess. I felt so angry, not just at my brother, but at myself too. I was bottling up my feelings, blaming myself for not noticing my brother's behavior and, above all, feeling powerless because I couldn't protect my girlfriend like I had promised. I was afraid that something similar could happen again, and I wouldn't be able to stop it. After several sessions, things began to improve. We both started feeling better mentally and decided to take self-defense classes. A few weeks ago, I proposed to her. When I told my family, everyone was happy for us, but my mother was a little quiet. When no one else was around, she asked if we could talk privately. Once we were alone, she told me she was happy for me and for her, but she needed to share something. She then confessed that she had been in contact with my brother since the pandemic began. She said that he reached out to check on her and my father, to see if there was anything he could do to help, and to express his regret for what he had done. My mother kept talking about him until she revealed something that nearly made me yell at her. She told me, "I think it's time for you to forgive your brother." Before she could continue talking, I left the room, took my keys and went home. When I arrived, I told my fiancée what my mother told me, and she was as upset as I was by my mother's words, and I couldn't believe she said that. The following days, along with congratulations on my engagement, I also received questions about my brother and that, if we had spoken again, if we're already reconnect and things like that. I tried to ignore these situations as much as possible until 4 days ago my mother called me saying that she had told my brother about my engagement and that he was coming to town next week because he wanted to talk to me. I argued with my mom because she had no right to tell him something like that. I hung up on her and have had no contact with her since. After that, some relatives have told me that maybe my mother is right and that I should give my brother a second chance. I reached my limit yesterday afternoon when my father called me to tell me that I had to be a good brother and at least try. Even my father asks me to forgive my brother for what he did. Suddenly everyone forgot what he did. That 4 years is enough to forget about what he did, and I honestly can't understand how they can think like that. I honestly don't know what to think about my family right now, just that I'm upset with them and I definitely don't want to see my brother again. I wrote here because I needed to vent and my therapist appointment was postponed and I needed to vent. Maybe Reddit it's not the most professional choice, but I needed to get my feelings out somehow, and I appreciate whoever is reading this. PD. To all those who took the time to read this, I sincerely thank you. English is not my first language, so I apologize for any grammar mistakes, and if anything from my story is not clear I will reply. Thanks again. A comment that really captures the situation. So, your mom is protecting and expecting you to forgive a rapist/sexual predator? Maybe her sounds racist but isn't attitude indicates she has less respect for your partner? What would she say if someone tried to assault your sister? I doubt she'd be saying forgive and forget. Take this as a sign. Your family is willing to sacrifice you, your partner, and your relationship just to maintain a facade of a happy family with a rapist. And she's a woman. How could she? Honestly, OP, you might as well cut ties now, because the fact that they want reconciliation is the final nail in the happy family coffin. Your fiancé now knows that your family doesn't have her back or yours, and that what happened under their roof is being treated as no big deal. They're asking her to smile, attend family gatherings, open Christmas presents, and sit across from your brother who sexually assaulted her, expecting her to act like everything's fine. Let's be real, your mom never believed your fiancé. She probably thinks it's a misunderstanding, maybe you were both drunk and overreacting, or something else equally ridiculous. Your mother disgusts me, both as a woman and as a fellow mother of boys. It's clear where they stand. and they didn't choose your side. It's time to walk away and start fresh. If your brother comes back, your fiancé may never feel safe again. Update. Hey everyone. Honestly, I didn't expect to update so soon. When I first posted, I just needed a place to vent my feelings, but I never expected to receive such kindness from all of you. Thank you so much, and I especially appreciate all the well wishes for my fiancé. I also want to address some common questions you had. Firstly, if it wasn't clear in my previous post, I want to clarify that I will never forgive my brother. For me, he's no longer alive, he died to me 4 years ago. Secondly, not everyone in my family wants to forgive my brother. It's actually a small group who think this way. I could easily cut them out, but that's only the case for a few people, excluding my parents. I also want to mention that my sister is on my side. She's my fiancé's best friend and the only one besides me who truly understands how much my fiancé suffered during the first month after the incident. As for what I told my parents, I told them that if my brother is in town, I will never speak to them again. Regarding what my brother has been up to the past year, when my mom told me he contacted her at the start of the pandemic, he had basically moved to the other side of the country, changed his name, and started therapy to supposedly reform. I didn't believe it, and I didn't ask for any further details. My sister also hasn't brought him up with my parents, so that's all we know. For those asking why my brother isn't in jail, I responded privately to one person about this, but I want to explain to everyone here as well. The reason I didn't press charges is because I beat my brother up so badly he had to go to the hospital. A lawyer friend of mine told me that if I pressed charges, he could drag me into it as well, and I'd end up in jail for some time. On top of that, my then-girlfriend would have had to testify, and she wasn't in a position to do that. My priority was her well-being, and I couldn't help her if I was in jail. The best option we had at the time was a restraining order for him. One of the reasons I didn't update sooner was that my fiancé and I both got a restraining order against him. I hadn't told my parents about this, so if he showed up, they were supposed to take him to the police station. Also, some of you mentioned that the attitude that my mom had in these situations is because, like I mentioned in my previous post, my girlfriend isn't from our community, but that is not the reason, I can assure you that. So now talking about everyone expected. Why did I respond to my family? Well, I already had prepared something to say to all of them that were thinking to forgive my brother, and for my parents give them an ultimatum about to pick between their son, a man who tried to R0P his brother fiancé, or me and their daughter. But I realized something else, while I was reading the comments of my previous post, to make my thoughts make me think about a horrible possibility that might happen. The comments were basically about how my brother was confident enough to try to R0P my fiancé in a house full of people, and that for the reaction of my parents these days that there was the possibility that my brother had done something like that before, and even worse that my parents cover it. That question shook my world again. I never thought about that possibility. It was obvious that I was thinking too much about it that my fiancé asked me about what I was thinking. Note, a few hours after I posted, I spoke to her and asked if she wanted me to delete the post. After reading the initial comments and the ones that followed, she told me she understood why I did it, and she really appreciated all the kind messages and support she received. Thanks again, everyone. When I told her about the possibility that my brother may have done similar things to others in the past, it made her shudder. After that, we talked to my sister and began asking other family members, those who support me, friends, and community members, if they had ever noticed anything unusual about my brother before the incident. So far, no one in my family remembers my brother ever showing that kind of behavior towards family, but friends have a different story. Some remember him being especially kind around their friends or girlfriends of family members, sometimes a little too touchy, but nothing that seemed like an attempt at anything more serious. It wasn't until my sister reached out to the sister of my brother's ex-girlfriend that we learned more. She said my brother acted strangely around her family, and since he had been dating her sister, she noticed that the girl became unusually quiet around him. She also mentioned that my brother had been very flirtatious with her. We also contacted an ex-coworker of my brother, who told us that after a company party one night, my brother took another coworker with him. This coworker was very drunk at the time, and the next morning, she couldn't remember much about what happened. This whole situation has made me realize that my brother was never the person I thought he was. After hearing these stories, I am now convinced that my brother is a danger to everyone around him. Since yesterday, we've gathered all the possible evidence against him, and when we're ready, we plan to share everything with our community, on social media, and with anyone who needs to know. I also want to mention that I haven't discussed any of this with my parents yet. Tomorrow morning, I plan to drop the bomb on them and give them an ultimatum. I will also tell them that if we find any proof that anyone knew about my brother's actions, they will also face consequences. I won't be able to update for a while, or at least not with any big updates, until my brother faces the consequences of his actions. This is definitely not how I imagined the weeks after my proposal, but this is something we can't ignore. My fiancée has been there for me every step of the way, and I've done my best to support her through all of this. I can't even imagine how she feels right now, but I'm so proud of her for not letting her trauma stop her from helping others. Once again, thank you to everyone who has shown their support. The OP made one mistake, in the line that says, a man who tried to R0P his brother fiancé or me and their daughter, he meant their daughter. He was referring to his sister who is pregnant, and he corrected this mistake in a comment. Update. Hello everyone, it's been a while since my last update, but I wanted to wait until the situation was fully resolved before posting a complete update. First, I want to thank everyone for their kind messages and well wishes for me, my fiancé, and any other potential victims of my brother. Now, to get into the main issue, what has happened? While the aftermath is still ongoing, I'm happy to share that my brother is now facing justice for his actions. When I last updated, my fiancé, some friends, and I began digging into my brother's past, trying to uncover whether he had abused or attempted to abuse any other women. Once we had gathered enough evidence, we intended to hold him accountable for his actions. In the end, we uncovered the cases of 8 different women, including my fiancé, who were in some way molested by my brother. These included ex-girlfriends, former coworkers, and 2 current coworkers of his. I also mentioned that once we had everything, I planned to show my parents what kind of monster they were defending, and that we would release the information on social media. However, things didn't go according to plan. Our lawyer advised against it because if I showed the information to my parents, there was a risk they might try to protect my brother and stop us from taking the actions we had planned. At first, I hadn't considered this possibility, partly because I thought I could still get through to my parents, but at that point, I realized I couldn't trust them. There was a chance they had already covered up for my brother in the past. The lawyer also explained that sharing the information on social media could work in my brother's favor, as he could claim defamation, which would only complicate things unnecessarily. So, I decided to delay the confrontation with my parents. During this time, I went no contact, NC, with them because I didn't want them to ruin things, and I couldn't trust them anymore. I need to mention my sister here as well. She really stepped up for me. Throughout all of this, she pretended to be neutral with our parents, but in reality, she was secretly supporting me and my fiancé. During this time, she uncovered even more details about what my brother had been up to. Here's what she learned. After the party incident, my brother moved to the other side of the country to live with a friend, as my family had turned their backs on him at that point. When he arrived there, he started telling people that his family had disowned him because they found out he was having an affair with his brother's girlfriend. Yes, he had the audacity to say this about my fiancé. As I mentioned before, there was no police report because after the incident, I sent my brother straight to the hospital, and that prevented us from taking legal action without him dragging me into it. That's why he was able to get a job and rebuild his life. My brother first reached out to my parents at the end of 2021, during the worst part of the pandemic in our country, and since then, he and my mother have been in regular contact. My parents even visited him a few times. To make matters worse, during those years, my brother had a daughter. It turns out that in April of 2021, he had a one-night stand, and as a result, he got a woman pregnant. They agreed to co-parent since neither of them wanted to get married. In December of that same year, my niece was born. My brother introduced his daughter and her mother to my parents and sister just 2 weeks before we had gathered all the evidence, and when my sister told me, it hit me like a cold splash of water. At first, I couldn't believe what my sister was telling me, but when she showed me pictures, it was like everything I thought I knew came crashing down. Not only was my family facing the truth, but his family was as well. Then I realized this child was yet another reason to fight for justice, because we couldn't risk her and her mother being exposed to my brother. Throughout this, my fiancé and I were there for each other. If this situation has been difficult for me, I can't even imagine how hard it has been for her. I now fully understand what it's like to overcome a traumatic experience like hers and to revisit it in order to help others. The least I can do for her is stand by her every step of the way through this process. Eventually, the day came. My brother was at my parents' house when the police arrived. According to my sister, it wasn't a pleasant scene. As soon as the police knocked on the door, my brother tried to run, but the police caught up with him. He attempted to resist, which led to him being tossed and charged with assaulting an officer. After 2 days in custody, he was sent to prison while the trial was ongoing. The trial itself was an emotional roller coaster. Inside and outside the courtroom, 2 of the women who had been assaulted by my brother broke down in tears during their testimony. My fiancée kept it together during her own testimony, but once we were alone, she broke down in tears, and I couldn't help but cry with her. It was in those moments, especially when my parents and sister testified, that I completely broke down. My brother was finally facing justice, but the damage he had caused was already done. I know many of the women, including my fiancée, may never fully recover but will learn to live with the trauma. It was the hardest week of my life, but after so much time, my brother was found guilty on 8 charges. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. Of course, he tried to drag me down with him by accusing me of excessive use of force in self-defense, according to his lawyer, but the judge dismissed that accusation. As for my niece, her mother was initially in denial, but after we presented the evidence, she fully supported us in this fight. Regarding my parents and those who supported my brother, it's going to be hard to never see them again, especially my parents. But I can't trust them anymore, and while I'm losing part of my family, my future feels bright with the woman I love by my side. I now feel like a weight has been lifted, not only for my fiancée and me but also for all the other women my brother harmed. I'm filled with gratitude and admiration for those women, as well as for everyone who shared their own stories in the comments of my previous posts. To all the women and men who have been victims of such horrible experiences, I wish you peace and healing. For those who are still afraid to speak out, know that you are not alone. This situation has shown me that there are more good people than bad, and there will always be someone willing to help. I hope that my fiancé's story reaches the right people and can make a difference for those who need it. I feel like a chapter of our lives has closed, but in many ways, it marks a fresh start for everyone who truly deserves it. Now that my brother, the excuse of a human being, is finally behind bars, this story feels like it has come to an end. Honestly, it's hard to understand what my family was thinking, trying to forgive someone for committing an act that could cause lifelong trauma. I hope that the OP moves forward and embarks on a beautiful journey with his fiancée.